Now, in life, one of the biggest head hypnosis tricks is the belief that we need to know more before we can move. It's so tricky. It's so tricky. It's one of just like, it's a, what's one of those moves that's just like trump card? It's the trump card. It's like, for the head, if you're in your business, for example, and you're like, but I don't know exactly what my target market is, and you don't move until you've got that clarity, you've been tricked by your head. I need more clarity before I'm. Sometimes the next step is to get more clarity, but oftentimes that's the trump card of the head, making you feel confused, because when you're confused, you're completely immobilized. You're not moving anywhere. Remember, the head is terrified, it's fear-based, but it's really scared of going into the unknown. So the head doesn't want you to move forward into the unknown, but that's where fulfillment lies. That's what the heart wants. The heart wants you to love and grow. Where do you grow? In the unknown. The heart wants you in the unknown. The head does not want you in the unknown. So the head pulls the trump card of, well, what happens if this and then that, and gets you thinking about all these future things that puts you in fear and immobilizes you. It's a trump card. It instantly halts progress. It instantly stops you from being able to move forward. It's the trump card. It's the ultimate trump card. The truth is, and this is why these are the four truths. The truth is that you know what to do next, and you have the courage to access what's next. That's the truth. The truth is you can take your next step. I can take my next step. Right? So I'm going to keep massaging this idea out. There's lots to this. If you're thinking 10 steps in the future, you can't take your 10th step. You don't know what's going to happen after your first one, how that's going to influence your second, what you're going to do for your third. So contemplating what's 4 steps down the line has no utility. Has no utility. You can do the next one. And then when you do the next one will be presented. It's like walking up a staircase where the second step does not actually get created until the first one's created. The third one doesn't present itself until the second one's created. And this is, how obvious is this? Like, just think about how simple this is. I can take my next step. Yeah, duh, I know that. You know that. It's not like this is a revolutionary thing, but you forget it because the trump card, head hypnosis is so influential. It is such a trap, and it's so all-consuming that it uses beliefs and stories, like the story of, but I don't yet know exactly X, Y, or Z. That's a story. It's head hypnosis. It's tricked you. It's a trump card. It's played the trump card, and now you're not moving, right? But your fulfillment lies on the journey of the next step and beyond. Like, that's how you get your cool experience, and that's how you create your heart's desires. For me to have I'll give you an example for me. I often, on the earlier stages of I've been on a specific journey for like 5 or 6, let's say 6 years since I shut down my previous business of spirituality and emotional healing, and it completely changed the way that I wanted to serve in the world. So I was kind of like I've been learning to get back into business. I'm doing it now with this podcast, but for ages I was immobilized, and my head was playing the trump card of, well, what's the point of you launching a $1,500 workshop, which is how much my Art of Courage workshop is, which is so cheap compared to other offers that I've had. What's the point of running an Art of Courage workshop, putting effort in for like 6 weeks to have like 10 people there making 15 grand? Ooh, 15 grand. That's what my head says. 15 grand. I used to make like up to $1 million a month selling $20,000 workshops easily and getting finance approved. 50% of my clients paid me upfront through finance. So I would have make a few $100,000 a month easily. And there's weeks where I've made $240,000 myself cold calling. I'm going to spend 6 weeks to make 15 grand. This is the story of the head. So my head felt this feeling like, what's the point? Yeah, sure, you might get to a point in the future where your achievement matches what you used to do. But what's the point? You're going to look like a loser anyway. Even if you do your best effort here, you're still going to pull up so much shorter than where you used to be. Can't believe you stopped doing that. What a loser, right? It's a trump card. Then I go to, because that's under the presupposition that the purpose of life is success or outcomes, and the attachments are ruling my decision-making and behaviors. That's presupposing that the purpose of life is to have some sizable business. It's not. The purpose of life is fulfillment. When I do this right now, I'm not going to make any money from this podcast episode. I love it. I'm having the best time. I'm doing what I love right now. And so who's more successful? Stubborn, tyrannical, achiever version of myself that's like massively competing and comparing and feeling constantly dissatisfied where I and other people are in their business journey, or getting to experience the highest consistent quality experience of my life, have the most fulfilling life. I don't know. You get to choose. I've made my choice. I know I can rebuild that old business if I want. Like I said, I made $100,000 in a week last year. Didn't change my fulfillment. It's just an outcome. Doesn't mean that in the moment I'm feeling like a beautiful state of fulfillment. It's just an arbitrary external thing. Like being in a room with a Lamborghini doesn't change my nervous system. My nervous system's not like I can experience better stuff now. So that is a trump card that can be played. Because then when I felt that, there's no way you're going to compete with who you used to be. What's the point? It stopped me doing the thing, like taking the next step. The next step was to do like a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live, or do a post or do a video I can put on YouTube, or reach out to some people to get them to my workshop, or launch a workshop, whatever it is. I can take that next step. But when the mind is using clarity, confusion, like the idea of needing to understand things more, it's a trump card. You know your next step. You don't need to know 10 into the future. You don't need to know 100. You need to know 10 years in the future. It can be supportive to have a long-term goal, but it's not. You can take your next step. You can take your next step. I can take my next step. I can take my next step. And guess what? If I take my next step, I'm going to get to that 10 steps in the future a hell of a lot quicker, and it could look completely different. So it's a trick. It's a trick. I'm coaching people, and like people are paying me premium money to coach them. We're focusing on the next step. Like, I'll give you a series of your next steps. Just because you're working with me, it doesn't mean we teleport to our goals. It's like, I'm going to get you doing your next step, and not talking about the idea and getting all your needs met from constantly making the goal even bigger because you're feeling disappointed you haven't been taking your next steps. And so you're just going to inflate the goal now and create even more distance from it. So you feel even more paralyzed to taking your next step. No, you just take the next step. I can take my next step. And this is the thing. If you're thinking 10 steps into the future, the problem is that you might not be able to do the 10th step, because every step that we take, we grow. I want you to really listen to this piece. If we as version 1.0 in relation to these steps we're going to take, I'm like, let's say me right now, I'm here right now on this podcast, this solo podcast episode. If I'm thinking about being on the Jay Shetty On Purpose podcast with millions of listeners, and I as me, who's got a lot less listeners listening to this, am feeling and thinking, oh, but how am I going to do that? I'm not going to do that. 1.0 of me version is sitting here right now, and it's probably going to be like 500 steps until I do that, or 1,000 or 1,500. So it's not going to be Ryan 1.0 on the Jay Shetty podcast. It's going to be Ryan, 1,500.0. So if Ryan 1.0 is thinking about how to do 1,500.0 action, of course it's going to feel out of reach. It's like if I went to the gym and I was like, but for the first time, I can't bench 150 kilos. That's going to be so difficult. Yeah, no, you can't. So version of you, 300 gym sessions into the future is going to lift that chest sessions, 150 kilos. So if you're thinking about doing it now, of course you're going to feel like that's too heavy. But once you've done 300 chest sessions, that dude, 300.0 version of you on the bench press, is going to feel very differently about it than you are, because that guy has pushed 300 different sessions with heaps of different reps and sets and types of lifts. That guy's going to think, yeah, I'm used to this. I did 290 last week. I did 145 last week. Yeah, 150 feels accessible. That's my next step. So you got to associate to your next step. There's so much power in this. It seems simple, so our ego can just like diminish the power of this as a tactic to then avoid doing the next step, and then doing the step after, and then doing the step up after.